Morning. It's going to be with you on this Monday morning as we continue together in our time in Luke's Gospel. Hope you had a great weekend. Yesterday at St. Matthew's, we had our patriotic musical, and it's always such a blessing. Tim Rigby, our music minister, does such a wonderful job with it. So, if, you can go back and watch a live a replay of it on our website. I would encourage you to do that. I know that you'll be blessed by it, and I may even share it. Friday is our devotional that morning. I think you'd really enjoy taking a listen and worshiping with us in that. It was something really good. So we're gonna read today though from Luke chapter 1. We're still in Luke 1. Remember I said Luke's chapters are long. So we're in Luke 1, uh, verses 57 through 66, the birth of John the Baptist. Now the time came for Elizabeth to give birth, and she bore a son. Her neighbors and relatives heard that the Lord had shown his great mercy to her, and they rejoiced with her. On the eighth day, when they came to circumcise the child, they were going to name him Zechariah after his father. But his mother said, "No, he is to be called John." They said to her, "None of your relatives have this name." And then they began motioning for his father to find out what name he wanted to give him. He asked for a writing tablet and wrote, "His name is John." And all of them were amazed. Immediately his mouth was open and his tongue free, and he began to speak, praising God. Fear came over all the neighbors, and all these things were talked about throughout the entire hill country of Judea. All who heard them pondered them and said, "What then will this child become? For indeed the hand of the Lord is upon him." I think there's an interesting word there in John's gospel. Um, it says that all who heard these things pondered them. And later, when we get to the birth of Jesus, we're going to see that Mary pondered things as well. And so we see a lot of interesting things happening here. First, we see once again the blessing of life that in John's gospel we see with Zechariah, I'm sorry, with Elizabeth, with Mary, life there. So much like the Old Testament tradition of Rachel or Sarah, Elizabeth was able to have a child. The Lord blessed them with life, and now they're praising God for that. But Luke is a Gentile gospel. So Luke is interested in the Matthew, I'm painting with a very broad brush here. Matthew wants to show how the Matthew is going to show you the similarities between the gospel and the old covenant. They're all over. So that's a big deal for Matthew. Luke is going to show you the differences in some ways and how they have their uniqueness. And so Zechariah is interesting. He's an interesting character because what is Zechariah? He's a priest. He's a priest, and he gets this vision from God. And at first he doesn't believe it, and so he's struck down. And now the first thing that so after John's born, and now Zechariah has the chance to speak. And his Elizabeth said the child's name is to be John, and that was against the culture. In that culture, you were a lot of times named after your father. Particularly, your father was prominent, like Zechariah was. So the expectation would be, hey, he's going to be named Zechariah like his father. Well, what happens? Elizabeth says, no, he's to be named John. And so now they look to Zechariah to say, no, we're going to name him Zechariah. What does he say? He writes out, no, he's to be named John. And at that point, his mouth opened and he could speak. And then we actually will not read his we'll read the first thing that happens to him. Well, I'll go ahead and give an overview. Basically, verses 67 through 80, the end of this chapter, are going to be his song of praise. And what's interesting is now he's gone from being a mute priest to a speaking prophet. He's prophesying. He's looked favorably upon his people, raised up a mighty save for us in the house of David. He spoke to us, the holy prophets of old. He has shown mercy promised to our ancestors. And then he's speaking about Jesus. And you, child, shall be called the prophet of the Most High. You will go before the Lord to prepare his ways, to give knowledge and salvation to his people by the forgiveness of sins, by the tender mercy of God. The dawn on high will break upon us, to give light to those who sit in darkness, the shadow of our feet, to guide our way in the path of peace. The child grew up, became strong in spirit, and was in the wilderness to the day when he appeared publicly to Israel. So he's speaking of John here, where he says, he's a prophet, and you will be called prophet of the Most High. You will go before the Lord to prepare the way. John's preparing the way. So Zechariah goes from not believing and being mute to now he has spoken. Now the he has said, no, this is John. This is his name. And now what happens is he begins to prophesy. Now the Spirit is upon him. And he prophesies about who John is going to be. John's going to be a prophet of the Most High. John is going to be like what his dad's uttering. He's going to speak the word of the Lord. And he's going to prepare the way for the Lord. John has an amazing job. And in some ways, I think John is the example that we should seek to follow after. Because what does John do? John points others to Jesus. All throughout the Gospels, we read it. I especially love in John's Gospel, not John the Baptist, but John the Apostle. His Gospel, John is saying he must increase and I must decrease. John the Baptist understood that his ultimate job was to point to Jesus. We see that John the Baptist is going to be this Old Testament prophet. He's going to be like what's happening to his father now. He points to Jesus, and there is no higher purpose, no higher task, nor higher anything in life than to point to Jesus. He's going to give people the salvation, knowledge of salvation to his people for the forgiveness of sins. Those I love 79. Those who sit in darkness and the shadow of death, to give light. There's always light in the dark, friends. There's always light in the dark. There always is. The darkness wants you to think that darkness is all you live in. I think that's why hope. I was talking with some folks at church yesterday about Shawshank Redemption, how much I love it. And then he's lying about hope. Hope is a good thing. And I think one of the ways the darkness wins, one of the ways the devil wins, one of the ways that evil wins is when we lose hope. When we lose hope. And there's the individuals here, those who to give light to those who sit in darkness, in the shadow of death, and guide our feet in the way of peace. Um, John's going to point the people to Jesus, and John's going to point me and you to Jesus in his example and in his testimony and who he is. So, what a beautiful scene we see here of John's birth and Zechariah's prophecy. How God is working. How God is working. So, today we follow Jesus without a doubt, but we have examples like John the Baptist to lead us. Examples like John the Baptist to show us the path. And so, I guess a couple things to think about. Who have been the John the Baptist for you in your life? Who are the people who pointed you to Jesus? Who are the names? Who are the people? Your parents, perhaps. Maybe there was a preacher growing up that really pointed you to Jesus. Maybe there was a Sunday school teacher. Maybe there was a friend. Maybe there was a coach. For me, it was Coach Myers at Bogachetta. He pointed me to Jesus. Um, those other preachers I had, like Brother Bill Poole, mentors of mine, like Bill McAlilly. Um, they pointed me to Jesus. And now, at this point, I want to try to do that for others and point them to Jesus. So I guess in the same way, the people pondered this message. The same way in a little bit, we're going to have people, Mary, going to ponder a message. I want to ask you to ponder today. I want to ask you to ponder in closing. Who have been the John the Baptist in your life? The people that have pointed you to Jesus. The people who have shown you what Jesus looks like. And then who are the people in your life that you have pointed to Jesus? Or are the people right now that God's pointing to you to point to Jesus? We follow Jesus, friends. And John the Baptist does a great job of showing us what that looks like. So, hey, thanks for being with us. When I started kind of getting to it, I said, let's go ahead and finish out chapter 1. So we finished chapter 1, which means tomorrow we're going to read the Christmas story, the great Christmas story we all know so well. So thanks for being with us tomorrow as we pick up with John chapter 2. Not Luke chapter 2, not John. Hey, see you in the morning. Have a great day.